Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday morning to you. Glad you could join us on Community Connection. We believe here at Patrick Henry Family Services that every child should be in a thriving family supported by a faithful community. Three parts of that, very important. Every child, right, in a thriving family supported unconditionally by a faithful community. And I think our guest today is going to show us how we can make that possible. It's part of the puzzle. It's one piece of the community puzzle that needs to be put together for us to have this full picture of how we make this happen. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Mr. Day.
Thanks for filling in for Claudia today, who is off somewhere doing something important, I'm sure.
Kansas somewhere.
Kansas somewhere. This isn't Kansas.
No, it's not.
Well, thanks for filling in today.
Yeah, good to be here.
So you know our guest. You recently had an opportunity to do some collaboration with him. So why don't you introduce us to our guest?
I would be pleased to do that today. We have the pleasure of bringing in Dr. Sterling Wilder. Dr. Wilder is the executive director at Jubilee Family Development Center. Mm-hmm. He is a foster dad to, he just told us a little bit ago, over 30 kids. He is a council person in the Lynchburg City Council, and he's a pastor and has been a pastor for many years. And I'm sure there's a few other roles that he's had through the years. So, Dr. Wilder, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
You know, it is an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I admire your organization and the work you are doing in our community. You are definitely changing lives. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Well, I admired the fact that you can do all those things.
Oh, I hear you. Yeah. I just keep it moving, moving.
If you stop, that's what I'm afraid of. If you stop, I won't start again, right? Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your personal why. I mean, what motivates you to do all these things?
You know, my personal why really comes from my parents. I had a beautiful Christian upbringing. My father was a pastor. He pastored for over 50 years in Lynchburg throughout all of Virginia. My mother was a caregiver. She worked at Randolph College, but again, she was a caregiver, a beautiful mother at home where she took care of us, fed us every day. And I had a beautiful two-parent family bringing, where we would bring people in through our ministry that we had at our church, and he was pastoring. We would bring in people who might have been homeless or who might have been put out of the homes or needed a structured environment. So I grew up in that kind of caring and nurturing environment where persons cared for one another, where it was a real sense of the community. So that's kind of my why, is honoring the legacy and the way that I was brought, in the way that a child of God should be, is loving mankind and doing what you can to extend your arms, extend your resources, extend whatever you may have to your brother who's in time of need. And what Christ did, he came and he met a need to hurting people. So we as children of God, and I hope I can be spiritual here,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
people, I have to watch which environment I'm in. So in this environment, I can talk about Christ. So in that spiritual piece, we're meeting the needs of the people. What my parents did, what they taught me to do. They taught me about sowing seeds. They taught me about giving back. Taught me about tithing. So I believe in tithing. I believe in giving back. I started a foundation in my parents' memory just to honor them so their legacy can continue to live on.
Wow.
You know, you described that, and I think of, and we do talk about Jesus here. Mm-hmm. When Jesus said, I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was hungry and you gave me something to eat, in Matthew 25. And it sounds like your parents were those kinds of folks, that they just saw people and fed them as though they were feeding Jesus.
You know, it's one thing, but like on Sundays, our house would be full. On holidays, it wasn't just, we had a large family, but in addition to our family, you had persons from all over our community coming in for our dinners, for our meals, persons. Of course, everybody's mother was the best cook, but mine really honestly, she really was the best cook. So people would come for dinners, holidays, all the time, just everyday life. I grew up in the Rivermont area here in Lynchburg, and it was one of those real traditional, normal communities where everybody really loved each other, where all our neighbors were so close. I'm just so thankful. I was so blessed to grow up during that time period, to grow up on Ash Street where all the neighbors knew each other. We were a real family. You had one person, another next door to us was a pastor, another person like a senior citizen, another person was a beautician, a principal in front of us, and also we had a drug dealer on the other side. But even though he may have had some challenges, we all were a beautiful family. Sometimes your family have issues. Sometimes your family have challenges. But we had a beautiful family, working together and supporting one another with all of our challenges.
So what you're describing is you were part of a thriving family and surrounded by a faithful community. And if we could just get back to that, right? but we've lost both community and family in a lot of places, haven't we?
That's the biggest challenge. We're having an event at Jubilee on Saturday, April the 29th, where we're trying to bring in how families matter, how you matter. Because I grew up at a time where the family was stronger, where we really cared about one another. And not saying we don't, but you see more challenges in families, more challenges in neighborhoods. So I grew up where the neighborhood supported one another. If you had a problem, they would all rally together to meet those needs. So I would like to get back to that.
Yes.
So at the event on the 29th of April, we're having an event where we're bringing in our school system. We're bringing in different community providers. We're bringing in resources to say, what does your family need for your child to be successful in school? How can you help your child be successful? So we kind of bring it back to let parents know how important they are, that they really matter, not to dog them or make them feel guilty, but say, we want to help you. We want to support you. Here are some of the resources from the school, from the community, that we can strengthen the education process of our children. And we understand the importance of educating our children, and we want to be there for you, and that you definitely matter.
So you didn't start out your career thinking, I want to start a nonprofit to work with disadvantaged youth. That's not where you started. You had a different career path.
Yes.
Tell us how you backed into Jubilee and what you're doing now.
After I got out of college, my undergrad was in accounting. So I got out of college, I worked at Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation as an internal auditor for the IG's office for 10 years in auditing failed banks and institutions. But through the ministry of our church, I would look back, I would come home on weekends. I was living in D.C., commuting on weekends, come home every weekend to go to my church and help my father in the church. So I was looking at the youth in our church, and they weren't doing anything. They were sitting back. They didn't have cell phones back then, but they were in the back talking. Now they do cell phones, but in the back they were just talking and not really paying attention. So I got my niece and a couple other young kids. I said, what can we do so you can be active in church? I want to make sure your spiritual process is going. What can we do? So what my niece said, let's start a youth choir. So we started a youth choir. And then it was after that, it grew more and more. And out of the youth choir, we had about 20 kids. And I looked at the youth choir, and on the youth choir, the 20 kids, only 2 of them, or maybe 3, had fathers in the home. And that blew my mind.
Yes.
I'm like, what? All of you have no father in the home, or like maybe a stepfather. That blew my mind. And I said, well, and I was doing my lunch break in D.C. I saw a book called Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. It's valued by a guy named Jwanzi Kunjufu. And one thing he stressed is that by the 3rd grade, there was called the syndrome where African-American males really start to decline. There need to be some intervention during that time period. So he suggested doing a mentoring program. So I said, well, let me start a mentoring program. So I started the mentoring program on Saturdays, and asked my father, I said, could we use a little room at the basement of our church? So we had a small little closet, it really was a closet, in our basement of our church. when we started a teen center, and we got the Prayer Faith Temple Teen Center, where we had an Atari, some old,
Atari, yes.
old computer. Like my mind goes back. Now Pastor Cam he brought our old church, so it's their back rooms. When I go there for a meeting, I just have a flashback on how we started. So that's how my ministry really started. And after 10 years, I was commuting back and forth. I just couldn't keep going back and forth from D.C. to Lynchburg, and my heart was in Lynchburg. My heart was in the ministry, and I could see what God was calling me to. I enjoyed my work in D.C. I enjoyed my team at the FDIC, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't my heart. And I left my job in 97 and came back to Lynchburg full-time basis, and I had a desire to build a community center. And then everything was God's timing. My mother was fighting cancer. A friend of mine, her husband had just died from Lou Gehrig's disease. Another friend of mine told me about that he knew what I wanted to do and connected me with Kevin Campbell from Habitat for Humanity, who had just finished Jubilee Heights. And then Mary Whitaker at the time said it needs something for families to do. So Kevin said, I'm going to build a community center. So I'm trying to build a community center with no resources, no money whatsoever. Just left my job and tried to say, how can I build a community center? But just had a lot of faith. And the Lord just orchestrated. I mean, when I look back at God's timing, on the time I came home and spending the last days with my mother during her fight with cancer, spending time with her, supporting them, taking her to the doctor. That's if you have a great parent, that's one of your joys is to help take care of your parents and take them to the doctor appointments. I mean, she would have chemo and she couldn't walk her to the house. So we had to pick her up and take her to the house. But that was just a joy to do that for those that care for you and love you and nurture you. So to be home during that time period was powerful. And then to have the connections. I started a Jubilee Center with the right people at the right time. With Susan, her husband had just died. She had 3 boys. He died like at 39 or 30 years old. And here she is raising 3 boys. So she was hurting. My mother had just died. I was hurting. And we poured that loss into a community. We poured that loss out of hurt into something great and started a Jubilee Center. So we built it from the ground up, and then there was almost 25 years ago now when we started the Jubilee Center. It was all divine connection from God.
This will be a great time. For those of you who may not be aware of Jubilee Center, let's show the commercial. Let's introduce everybody to Jubilee.
My name is Sterling Wilder. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of the Jubilee Family Development Center. Jubilee has 3 phases, which is education, athletics, and occupational. And our goal is to support families, make them sustainable. So whether it's giving them better careers, whether it's helping them with education, whether it's helping them with physical fitness, whether it's helping them to careers. One thing we look at our community is about a 24% poverty rate. And what can we do to address that? Make sure that our community is educated. Make sure our community is in better, higher paying jobs. So Jubilee's like a resource tool where we can educate our children, and then also for our person who may be in poverty, help them get a better outlook on life with a better paying career.
My name is Frisco Sandage. My position here at Jubilee is Athletic Director. I actually went here when I was a kid. Next door, I grew up in James Crossing. But with a place like Jubilee, I was able to get away from some of the bad things that occurred in my everyday life. I was fortunate enough to grow up here and where I grew to love the game of basketball. And from there, I was able to go to college at Delaware State University to play basketball, and then eventually play professionally overseas for 7 years. So I'm just pretty much here giving back to the kids, trying to give them that same direction. Kids with the same, background as me, just to give them hope. I'm big on changing lives and helping give direction in any way that I can. So thank God for Jubilee.
People should get involved with Jubilee because it's the right thing to do. We as a community, it's going to take that village to change poverty, to change all the situations in our community that are wrong, from teen vows and teen pregnancy to homelessness to poverty. We are a community. We all have to work together. That's how we make our community better. I'm so thankful for Foster Fuel, for the work and support they do here at the Jubilee Center. We're thankful. They have planted seeds in so many parts of our community, and that's what it's going to take. Planting seeds in our community so our community can grow, so our community can thrive, so we as a community can be stronger and we can be better. We can have a stronger village because we can work collectively together. And I thank you, Foster Fuel, for your support in changing our community and touching lives on a daily basis.
Wow, it's powerful, wasn't it? Hey, Dr. Sterling, you say several times, right, it takes a village. Dr. Marvin Mitchell says, but it takes a church to raise a village, right? Because some of our villages, right, what happens if the village isn't strong?
Yes.
Right, our families then, right? So I just see you doing full circle here. Church, community, pouring into kids, families back, right? It's a big circle.
You know, and one thing, and it's so funny, our lesson in Bible study last night is about discipleship. Mm-hmm. So we're doing a series about discipleship. And I went to a funeral yesterday for a coach used to be at Heritage. And the young man that got up, now he's a coach like at University of Kansas or somewhere. And he said he's a coach today because of what Coach Knight planted within him. Mm-hmm. So when we get the right spiritual foundation, when we get when the churches do what they're supposed to do, is disciple the nation and help them become disciples of Christ, then it will help change our community, that we will have the resources to change our community, that we can impact a life so that life touched that life, and that life will touch this life. So we continue to disciple one another as we go forward. Mm-hmm. So we try to disciple people to be Christians for the Lord and continue to go forth stronger, and we can help build stronger families when we do that.
Hmm. A lot of times, emphasis is kind of on wholesale. Let's try to make big, massive changes. But you're talking about retail. One child, one family, one neighbor at a time, right? And that's long work, but that's the work that's got to be done, isn't it?
Definitely. And we were talking about that last night as well. It's not about the masses. It's about what you're doing individually. You know, I have a thought that I've been working on is in the concept of, like, for example, in James Crossing. And if what would happen if we all take a building, this church would take this building 108 or take building 106, and just out of those like 6 apartment houses, how can we meet the needs in that apartment complex there, that particular building? Say First Baptist take this group, Second Baptist take that group, that building, and meet the needs of everybody in that building. Not giving them a handout, say, how can we help pull you out of poverty? Do you need tutoring? Do you need better employment? Do you need transportation? Do you need food? And through our resources, like the Vision 30 and those other resources we have, meet the needs of that family and continue to disciple them and mentor them so they can get to the next place in life where at some point they will no longer need that assistance. Get them out of Section 8 housing, get them to their own homes, their own places, and let them grow and reduce that poverty rate. But more than that, we're training people to be disciples and that they can disciple the next person.
I'm ready to sign up. How about you, Jeff?
There we go. Well, it's interesting. This apartment complex is called James Crossing.
Yes.
James 1:27 says, religion that God our Father considers as pure and faultless is to care for widows and orphans in their distress. They're right there in James Crossing, James 1:27. I think we have a calling. You've provided that to us. So I'm curious to find out. It started as a mentoring program in a closet in your dad's church.
Yes.
And I heard it really has expanded. Tell us more about some of those other services, including the occupational support that you provide.
Yes. You know, again, Jubilee has 3 phases: education, athletics, and occupational. We're open Sunday through Saturday, or Sunday to Sunday. Every day of the week, something's going on. At school programs, you know, during the weekdays until 6. And then we have athletic programs after that. And then you have a second building, occupational center. So we have a beautiful career center. We have nurses' aid classes, PCA classes, med tech classes in one building, and you have classes like cybersecurity. We partner with adult education as well as CVCC for various programs. So you can actually take classes at CVCC right at Jubilee. And we have a GED program now through the school system. Well, if you don't have a finished school, you can get your GED. So we have two beautiful buildings. First is called the Beth Cosby Building. I donated some funds in his memory. And then the next one is the astronaut Leland Melvin STEM Center, which is our newest building. And Leland Melvin was an astronaut from Lynchburg, Virginia. Right here, he donated some funds to have the naming rights for that particular building. But again, to see a young man from Lynchburg become a professional football player and an astronaut is amazing. And from the I think he grew up like in the kind of the inner city area originally, then they moved to Fort Hill. But again, for young people to see a Leland Melvin, they make it see themselves as African American male to be an NFL player and an astronaut. That to me is amazing. So great work is going on in our STEM center, from the mechatronics program at CVCC to various other credentialing programs that you can take certain classes to get certain credentials that will give you some stackable careers like OSHA 10 and various other classes that person like Belvac or Delta Star or those other companies, they're looking to hire people with those certifications. And those are some of the highest paying jobs, $20 an hour, $30 an hour. I have one young man that grew up in James Crossing. He had a little situation, got a little trouble, and we helped him get out of that. He had to go to jail for like a few months, whatever. He was making biscuits at a fast food restaurant. We got him into a program called Plugged in Virginia through CVCC, through Workforce, through Goodwill, to a variety of partners. It was like a 3-4 month program where he got like a machining degree. He is now working at Delta Star, making probably twice of what I make. I have a doctorate and a boatload of school loans. So to see this young man who grew up in the inner city now, I mean, he had his wedding recently at Oakwood Country Club. But just to see how he has grown and taking care of his family, he's married now, taking care of his kids, you know, he'll see on my Facebook saying, I want to get a house. I want something else. I'm traveling here. He proposed to his girlfriend on a helicopter ride. You know, just to see an inner city kid who grew up in poverty, you know, with no father, is a strong mother, and coming to Jubilee as a kid who made a few little challenges with the situation like all of us have, and now he's thriving in a beautiful career. So we would have more success stories like that.
Yeah.
Just can think, what would happen if you wasn't a foster parent? What would happen if you wasn't that mentor or to be that big brother or that big sister for the kid in that neighborhood or the kid in that community center? That's why it's so important for us to give back. And then as we give back, just don't leave them, but kind of shepherd them and disciple them along the way to give them all the right resources they need so they can be successful. But he applied for his last job. He came in to show us how he was dressed. It just touched my heart. And then he had me to help him fix his tie, you know, and he was ready for the interview. So again, he's driving for more. I want more. We gave him exposure. When you give kids exposure and give them opportunity and give them that cultivation, discipleship that they need to grow to the next level, it is amazing. And those seeds you plant are going to grow.
I think he's talking meaningful relationship, don't you?
He is, yeah. Yeah, here at Patrick Henry, we talk about meaningful relationship. It's not enough just to throw resources at a kid or say, here's a scholarship, go to school. There's not somebody that will walk you through that. So it's powerful. I really believe it's the key, right? And so somehow we've got to be able to scale meaningful relationships in a community, right? One at a time. But there's more than just one out there. So how do we do that? And it does take resources to do it. And in fact, our organizations collaborated on a kind of a fundraising thing. Tell us a little bit about what that was about, Jeff, and why investing in an organization and thinking about it long term makes a difference.
Yeah, so Jubilee and Patrick Henry and 3 other organizations partnered here recently to really unlock maybe some of the longer-term generosity of our donors. It was a planned giving event called Leaving Your Legacy. Leveraging Your Legacy, that's what it was.
Yep.
And with the idea of saying, hey, folks are have to think about their estate after they're gone. There's a reality to that. And so how could those funds be used in a powerful way to advance the missions and the organizations that they care most about? And so we had about 50 people participate in that. We were excited to see that. And what was exciting was to see the five of us representing five different organizations link arms and say, how can we do this together? And I think that was pretty exciting to see how that played out, with the idea, again, that those funds, like we've experienced at Patrick Henry, those funds can make a meaningful difference for generations, really, in perpetuity, right? And
I love that event because it shows us how we can work together. And it's the area that Jubilee had been desiring to go in. And with the leadership, like with your leadership, we were able to go into that area because the planned giving is so important about leaving that legacy. Again, myself, I left a legacy at the Community Foundation in memory of my parents because I want the teachers they gave me, I want those teachers to live on. Even when I'm gone, my parents' legacy will live on. And it's about that. It's not about how big my storehouse can be. It's about how many people I've discipled, how many people's lives I've transformed. That's how you. And one of the comments on the book we're reading is how do you measure success? How do you measure, is your church being successful? It's not about how large it is or how many people you got coming on Sunday morning. It's how many people you really discipled to Christ that has transformed their lives. So what we've got to do, continue to do is wrap around services, but that legacy project was so crucial that we can have a sustainability, that we can sustain the programs that when I'm gone on to the next place for heaven. That the legacy will continue to live. It won't stop with me, but it will continue on.
Right on. So you're a city council person. You've been invested for a while in that role as well. And while this isn't a political conversation that we have here, would you mind just sharing with us your vision for Lynchburg, given the fact that you have leadership roles in a variety of capacities?
You know, one thing, my desire is that we have a compassionate community, that we meet the needs like Christ did of all of our community, regardless of where you're from, whether you're popular, which zip code you live in, or your race, that we all have opportunities for education, that we all have opportunities to excel. Like we have a beautiful park system, beautiful trails that I don't ride a bike and I don't walk the trails, but my neighbors do. And that's what it's called a community. Certain services I might not need or use, probably would never use. But again, because we're in a community, we work together, that we support one another. So I want to have a healthy community that has a great quality of life, that people want to move here, that people want to say, I love Lynchburg. I like the parks. I like the pleasant attitude of people there. I like the Southern hospitality. I love the Virginian or the Crocketeer or those various many hotels we have. I almost not naming them. But they have a great establishment in our community that I want to be a part of that. So that's the kind of legacy of what I want to do, is make it a welcoming community for the people living here, where everybody feels welcome, where everybody feels loved, and a community that's growing, where businesses are coming in, they feel welcome and coming in, and they feel like they're thriving, that we have the resource to meet all their needs, that we're training people properly, that those skill sets that may be needed for us, like a Belvac or Delta Star or Southern Air or plumbing careers, that those careers are being met here in our community, that we have the right training programs to meet all those needs so it can attract more businesses to come. We want a business to say, I can't come to Lynchburg because I can't train my staff there. There's not enough quality workers. We want to make sure we're meeting all the needs of our businesses to entice them and encourage them to come to Lynchburg.
It's a big vision, right? Every child in a thriving family supported by a faithful community. Hey, so as we wrap up, tell the folks what it is that Jubilee needs the most, whether it's finances or volunteers or connections. You look into the camera. Tell us what you need.
You know, Jubilee has a whole list of needs, a whole list of things that we continue to make Jubilee even a better place. Some of the needs are, we always need finance. That's just a part of life. A church needs finance to grow, to continue. Jubilee needs that tithe to that 10% as well. So we always could use more resources. We always need prayer more than anything else. If you don't have the resources, or you do have the resources, just pray that God will continue to meet every need at Jubilee, that we'll continue to have an impact in the children's lives and the families' lives that we are meeting in our community. I don't want to say, I just came to Jubilee and I went there. I want to say Jubilee made a lasting impression on my life, and he was a disciple, and now I want to know my Lord Jesus Christ. So pray that we have an impact in families. I was taking a lady home yesterday, and she was saying, I heard you were a pastor. I want to come to your church. So that kind of impact we want to have on people's lives.
Yes.
So we always need financial resources. We had to in the process, try to purchase a new van. Like our van does not have air, so we just try to get it before the summertime. I'm trying to ride in a van with a fan, like a church fan. That's for church. It's not for the van. So we're in the process. We have some resource. I think a Sure company or another company just gave us some funds. So we in the rest of trying to get the rest of the funds for a van. We always need more volunteers, especially for our summer camp. We mainly have, every day we have about 30 Liberty students, they're work study or Christian service students. So we mainly have them during the week, the school year. So I would need more volunteers for the summertime. So those are some of the hot items that we need at the Jubilee Center.
Well, Jeff, let's see if we can help him out with at least one of those things he's just talking about.
Yeah, so we know you have a Thomas Webb Scholarship Fund
Yes.
to support youth going to higher education.
Yes.
And so we'd like to make a contribution to that to
Oh,
help
wow.
out more. We actually have a scholarship fund here at Patrick Henry.
Yes, y'all supported my fraternity with that project as
That's
well.
right.
We appreciate it. Yes.
Exactly right. And so we had a few extra dollars,
Okay.
and this year, based on our scholarship committee's designation of funds, and we wanted to support what you're doing because we believe so much in what Jubilee Development Center is doing.
Wow.
So
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Tom Webb was an educator, and we served on the school board together. He was on Jubilee board, and I can't talk about Tom Webb. He
guy.
impacted our community. He touched so many lives. So we appreciate. So his wife still started a foundation in his memory, and we give out scholarships every year to a Jubilee kid. And this is so powerful. One of my foster kids, Ravina at VCU, he's one of the recipients now.
Is that right?
He's in the military doing reserve duty, and he just played my fraternity, which is great. But he is working at VCU and changing other young people's lives.
That's
He's
right.
been discipled.
There you go.
And he's giving back to other kids in Richmond.
All right.
Now I want to go over.
That's right. We could listen to this all day, but unfortunately, we don't have the time to do that, Dr. Wilder. Thank you so much for doing what you do and doing it in this community. And a shout out, honor to your parents for raising such a fine young man who became a leader. And folks, that's really what it's all about. We got to get back to family. We got to get back to stronger communities. And so let's put the contact information on how you can know more about Jubilee Family Center.
Yeah, Jubilee Family Development Center.
Yes.
But www.jubileefamily.org. Yes, that's it.
There we go. All right. Well, folks, thank you for joining. We'll close out as we usually do with our Vision 30 video. Let's do something today to help a child or a family in need in this community. Thank you. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Nobody gets to choose their family. If a person is fortunate enough to be born into a healthy family, then life can be much like floating down a smooth, gentle river in the summertime. But an unhealthy family is like a dangerous river, filled with rocks, debris, and fast-moving water. This river swiftly leads to the steep waterfall of adulthood, tragically forming a new river of dysfunction. Even if you aren't born into an unhealthy river, there are many streams that cause a person to get there. But there is only one way to get out, and that is through a meaningful relationship. Across our region, there are many agencies, churches, and families who are devoted to helping children escape from unhealthy rivers. Some feel their role is to wade in and rescue children. They foster, adopt, or provide safe families. Others stand by the river and support the rescuers by providing what they need. Still, others are upstream and stand in the gap to keep children from ending up in the negative situations. At Patrick Henry Family Services, we see ourselves as having an additional role. We are running up and down the shores of the unhealthy river, screaming, "Can't you see the children in the water? You have to do something." Vision 30 is a 10-year initiative. By 2030, we envision a region where all children are safe in their own family, or with caregivers who are supported by a local faith community. So, where do you stand at the river? Are you upstream, keeping families together and strong by standing in the gap? Are you in the river, directly impacting children? Are you on the shore, providing support for the brave folks who have entered the river? Or are you just passing by without noticing? No matter who you are, come down to the river with us. Let us help you find your place. Not only will lives be changed, but you will never be the same.